Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Portsmouth Coffee Talk. And this is Slim Overton, and I'm here, and we're waiting on our co-host, Stitt, and hopefully she'll come on later. But this is Hot Topic Monday, and the topic is we're watching them and telling the truth. So we have some people here, and we like to do the DMV thing, where we have Virginia people, Maryland people, and DC people, if possible. And that's what we have here this morning. And you're familiar with Louis Bracy, especially from Portsmouth, on Portsmouth Coffee Talk, and living in Maryland now and doing a lot of great things. And I want to say good morning to you all, gentlemen. And Louis, when you get ready, introduce your guests, and we can get started on a topic that wherever you want to start. You want to start with, administration gives us plenty, but this is hot topic. So introduce your guest first, and then we can get
Yeah,
started
so
with the
first I'd like
conversation.
to introduce my Johnny Cochran to Maryland in Anne Arundel County, Mr. Dow Jones. Dow Jones is a super attorney in our area. He's been involved in so many things in political world, in the activism world, uh, that he had a major part to play in the Ahmaud Arbery situation and in several other situations of abuse by police officers throughout America. I think he'd probably been to 35 states fighting for the cause. Uh, he's the a member of the transformative committee in DC, and he is just a person who's involved in so many things on the political front uh, that we'll get into that in the show. And he's also my former council person in our area. He was the first black elected mayor in the city council of Anne Arundel County. And I personally take responsibility for him winning his first election. So we'll talk about that during the show. And our other guest is Mr. Mike Rogers, Colonel Mike Rogers. Uh, Also, he's my state senator. He lives about 5 miles from me. And Mike Rogers is a person, I call him the hardest working delegate in the state of Maryland, because if you ever go on his page, he is doing something every day. I mean, on any given day, this man does 5 or 6 or 7 events. I don't know how he does it. So,
Yeah, that's
and that's
definitely what
Mike
we look
Rogers.
for.
And we're waiting on Pete Smith. And Pete Smith is our current, uh, he was the president of our local council for a couple of years. And he's a major in reserves, and he's a person who also is out there in the field a lot. And I have a personal story about each one of these people. But as you know, as I always say, anyone that I bring on this show, I don't knock heads with all of them. So, but I still love each one of them. But so, like you always say, we don't have to agree all the time, but we got to get together to solve these problems on this planet. So I like to start with I like to give Dow to give a 1 minute introduction to himself, and then Mike give a run introduction to yourself. Well, let's start with Daryl.
Thank you so much, Louis. It's great to be on the show with you and Slim. As Louis indicated, I'm Daryl Jones. I'm the board chair and co-leader of the Transformative Justice Coalition, which is a national 501c3 organization that is dedicated and focused on voting rights across America, as well as social justice issues. Right now we're in the throes of the battle, dealing primarily with the redistricting across the state of Maryland, as well as across the United States, and dealing with gerrymandered districts and what that means for African American and marginalized voters. So look forward to getting into it much more heavily with y'all on the show.
Yeah, I'll just step in right quick. That's great that you mentioned that. We're here in Virginia. We have our Speaker Scott that is heading up that. So that's why I like these conversations with the DMV, because we have so many things in common, and so the conversation sort of broadens out when we go into what you all are doing and we can learn from each other as well. So we appreciate that, and thank you again. But go ahead, Mr. Rogers.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Overton, Lewis, Daryl. It's good to see everybody this morning. Mike Rogers, retired Army guy, currently serving as a state delegate here in Maryland, uh, involved in NAACP and a lot of other different organizations. Happy to be here this morning. Appreciate the invite, Lewis and Slim, for the opportunity, and just look forward to being a part of the conversation and learning a lot.
So,
Okay, let me
Daryl,
say,
I like to,
Mr. Rogers. Lewis, let me say, Mr. Rogers, I want to thank you for your sacrifice there, and I really appreciate that. It's said a lot. I think I was at an event last night, and active duty military got up and said when he first got in, he heard that so much, and he didn't really take it to heart until it started coming from his own people about thank you for their service and their sacrifice. So I like to always make sure I give out that to people who have served us and continue to serve us even after they retire. So I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that, and it probably didn't get said, but Lewis, we're actually standing on his back because he came in probably a few years before I did, and so those folks that came for me, I always like to acknowledge them for paving the way. And for me, it's the family business. My grandfather served, my uncle served World War II, father's Vietnam era. I've been serving since 1983. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the
Thank you.
Lewis, we like I mentioned, we grew up in the same neighborhood, graduated from the same DIC Northam High School, and when we graduated, we were looking for Lewis, and we heard he was in the army now. Went straight from graduation, walking across the stage, until walking into the army. So we appreciate him as well. But go ahead, Lewis, with your topic there.
yeah, yeah. So I wanted, before I do that, gentlemen, I want you guys to know that you are in the presence of a man who has recently been awarded. Recently was Saturday. Him and one of our local famous DJs. His name is Chester B. They were a part of a ceremony uh, where they was an Image Awards, and both of my friend there, James Overton, and Chester B, also from my neighborhood, were awarded high honors in the Image Awards.
Yeah,
And this gentleman that we're talking to today, Mr. James Overton, is one of the leaders in our community in Portsmouth, Virginia, and the brother has never stopped serving in Portsmouth. And we've been in the radio for a while, been in media for a while, and uh, sometimes he's a little too humble. But
yeah,
this gentleman here is one of the people who keeps my hometown in the news, and he has a legacy. And I told Darryl earlier that his father was the first black judge in our city, and his father had a lot to do with a lot of the businesses working behind the scenes and working in front of the scenes in our town during the segregation. So he's a son of a legacy, and he's a legacy himself. So I want to give him the kudos for getting that award yesterday. And
yeah. Thanks,
so thank
Lewis,
you
and
again, James, for doing all you do.
thank you. Checks is in the mail.
So so anyway,
Hey,
I want to
Mr.
start with
Overton, let me say this
yeah.
before. I'll get your number afterwards, but my wife's from Virginia, and she's heading down to Hampton, and she's got an aunt that lives in Portsmouth, and so I know we probably know some of the same people, but we can catch
Oh,
up on that later.
okay, yeah, yeah. Be sure to
What's
do
what's
that. Yeah.
what's the aunt's name? What's the aunt's name?
Um, so the maiden name is Grimes, and so
You know some Grimes,
Oh
yeah,
so
man,
so
I know
so
we
so
know
you
Grimes. We know several Grimes.
so
yeah.
you got Barbara Grimes and Ann Grimes and uh,
Remember
so
James Grimes?
okay, okay. So yeah, we probably know some of the
Yeah,
same people.
my sister went to school with a Barbara Brown. You know, Portsmouth's not that big, so when you hear a
We all
name,
know each other.
you know, right? You know, you
It's
went to school with them or somebody
just
else, or you went to the
97,000
neighboring
people, but
school.
we all know each other.
Well, her mother before
Yes,
her
but anyway,
deceased mother's name is Barbara Grimes, but we'll catch up.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, we need to know each other. Thanks. All right.
yeah,
All right, Lewis, go ahead.
yeah. I want to start with Daryl. Daryl, will you give us your analysis of well, two things. Dow is working with the Supreme Court. I mean, working with the most recent cases towards the Supreme Court. We was demonstrating in front of the Supreme Court together last month, and Dow was one of the leaders in this redistricting BS. So Dow played a big part of it. He had a famous photo shot that I made sure that people saw. So, Dal, will you give our audience a brief view of where we stand with that Supreme Court issue?
Wow. Well, thanks for that question, Lewis. I'd call it a small question, but it could take 3 hours to answer. I tell you, when it comes to where we are with this Supreme Court, let me start with this foundational basis. The U.S. Supreme Court, as it now is configured, and the decisions that it has been rendering, is considered by the Brennan Center to be the most conservative U.S. Supreme Court since 1935. And I want you to think about that for a moment. Since 1935. So now we roll that into many of the voting rights issues that are before this court presently and decisions that they've made. One of the decisions that we were in front of the court for demonstrating that Lewis was making reference to was the Calais decision, which came out of Louisiana and dealt with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And, let's just, break it all the way down, right? What this Calais decision would do is that it would remove Section 2 from the Voting Rights Act, or restrict Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which requires that, there not be an impact from decisions that are made in state electoral boards and, that have a disparate impact regarding race, that you wouldn't be able to gerrymander districts, that you wouldn't be able to take Black voters and just spread them apart to disempower them so they can't elect representatives of their choosing, representatives that are come out of the community thought process that they're all cohesive to. That's what this Calais decision would do. It would have the impact immediately, should it be decided by the Supreme Court, of knocking out about 20 of the members of the Congressional Black Caucus. It doesn't stop there, though. It runs all the way down because it's a decision that's dealing with redistricting. And so if you had to take the race piece out of redistricting so that Republican-held legislators or Democratic-held legislators would be able to go ahead and redistrict in a way that they didn't have to give regard to anything dealing with empowerment of African-American voters. That would go all the way down to state delegates like Delegate Mike Rogers, if you were in a state where the Republicans were in control, so they could take apart his district so that he would lose that district. Why is that important? It becomes important on the state level because the state level folks are the ones that decide the congressional districts that are being made up, the redistricting maps for the country. It doesn't stop there. It would go all the way down to the local county councils, down to the school boards. So all of this would be the impact of this Calais decision that's pending right now before the U.S. Supreme Court to make that determination. Calais came out of Louisiana. And in Louisiana, what had happened, just so you have the background so you understand where it's coming from, with the Calais decision, what actually happened in Louisiana was that in Louisiana, after the redistricting in 2020, it was decided that there were so many Black folks that had moved to Louisiana that it merited another majority-minority district. And so the Louisiana state legislature said, we ain't gonna give it to you. We're not going to do. We don't care that the numbers say you deserve another member of Congress. We ain't going to do it. We're just not going to do it. And they refused. And so what ended up happening is that Press Robinson, who's a longtime civil rights activist down in Louisiana, filed suit against the Louisiana House of Representatives to forcing them to change the district to create the second majority minority district. They still refuse. The judge in the U.S. District Court said, you know what? It looks like, Press Robinson, you and the NAACP and y'all folks, you're right. This is going to fail. Way that they've done it is a violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. They need to draw your district. The state of Louisiana's General Assembly still refused. And so with that, the judge then said, if you don't do it, we're going to do it for you. We're going to draw the districts. Why does that change the flight of it all? It changed the flight of it all because in Louisiana, you had Steve Scalise, that is down there, one of the House leaders, and his district could be redrawn. You have Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, who's down there, whose district would be impacted by what the court would do. So with that, the state legislature then redrew the district to add the second majority minority district. There were 6 white folks. They didn't stop there. There were 6 white citizens in Louisiana that then said, you know what? That's discrimination against us because we should have equal protection under the Equal Protection Clause. This is a violation of the 14th Amendment. And they then sued the state of Louisiana for the map that was there. And that's the case now that has gone up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will now decide whether or not Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is the section that should be in place and is relevant today, or if the Equal Protection Clause for the white folks should prevail and say that Section 2 is no longer applicable, it's no longer needed, we're beyond this thing of racism, let's move forward. That's what this Calais decision is all about. That's the decision we're waiting on right now from the U.S. Supreme Court, Louis.
It's funny how they're saying we're beyond racism, and
Dal,
it's more prevalent. It's more prevalent now than ever. That's
Right,
crazy.
exactly.
Well, Dal, you laid
Louis,
it
you were
out
saying
pretty good in a short time. But I wanted to add. I want to come back to you, but I want Mike to speak up on this because James in our state, our governor is joining the fight for Maryland to be redistricted to try to
right?
counterbalance the evil things that's coming out of Washington. But Mike, will you speak to why our Speaker of the House, at least the last time I read, he was not on board? Not the Speaker. I mean, Richardson
Senate President,
President of the Senate.
from the Senate.
Senate President.
Our Speaker of the House is a lady, and she's on board, but the President of the Senate is not. Can you tell what that impact would be if he don't cooperate with the governor, and why is he not cooperating with the governor?
So, as I understand it, he feels that there might be some blowback with respect to some of the Senate districts, and it would put some of the Senate districts in the Democratic majority at risk. How well-founded those claims are, I'm not sure. There does seem to be a support in the House for it. The governor supports it, but the Senate president is not in support of it at this point. So,
Well,
could that
what I don't
change?
understand about this,
Perhaps.
Mike, y'all
Go ahead.
control the House and the Senate in this state. Democrats do, and they do it in an overwhelming margin. I do not understand why Richardson is not on board with this.
It's Ferguson.
It doesn't make
And
sense.
and and, and so again, Lewis, my understanding is that the Senate President, Bill Ferguson, is concerned about what that would do to the Democratic majorities. By redrawing the congressional districts, there are also impacts to the legislative districts. And then, as you know, you also have councilmatic and municipal districts. And so the concern is that when you redraw the congressional districts, there would be some impacts to some of the legislative districts. And as a result, that may impact some of the numbers in the Senate. The current Democratic majority, it basically could blow back in our face in terms of losing some potential Senate seats in the Maryland Senate. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the concern. And so, in order for it to pass, you got to have the House, the Senate, and the governor has to sign it. Well, the House at this point seems to be on board, and they're still having discussions. The Senate does not, and so, or at least the Senate president does not. There are members on both sides of the equation in the Senate, some who support it, some who don't support it. And so that's where we're at this point.
And Lewis, can I
What?
jump in?
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. What Delegate Rogers laid out is exactly correct with regards to the Senate President in Maryland and his position. Part of his position is that he's concerned about, what the map will look like after it's reconfigured, after it's done. The other part of what he's concerned about is that the Maryland State Supreme Court might somehow upend whatever the districts are that are redrawn by the legislative body, and then somehow disempower some of the elected officials that are currently in place. The problem with his philosophy and what he's laid out is this: is that what Senator Ferguson is missing is that what's being requested in Maryland is that right now they're it's a 7-1 split. There's 7 members of Congress that are Democrats and 1 is a Republican. And obviously, where we are in the country right now, we're trying to move to counter what's been done in Texas. So for what's in Maryland right now, what Senator Ferguson is missing is that when you reconfigure the 1 that you're after, just making it real, that the 1 a Senate seat that you're after, they're not saying make that 1 Senate seat overwhelmingly Democratic. That's not what is at issue. It can be refigured and redistricted in such a way that rather than it being a plus 20 Republican district, 20% more Republican, that it becomes a plus 5, which makes it simply a competitive district, which means that a Democrat could possibly win, but a Republican could also win that district. So the argument with regards to what he's laying out, with regards to saying other members of the Senate are going to be at risk, they can make the margins such that they're still competitive but comfortable districts for the member of his party. So that really doesn't hold water. The constitutional analysis doesn't hold water. I can tell you that there are no lawyers, no constitutional professors in the state of Maryland that have been willing to step up and support what Ferguson is saying, Senator Ferguson is saying, with regards to him saying that somehow the courts are going to undo this. Actually, it's very much the opposite, that the courts in all likelihood would either leave it alone or endorse what the legislative has done, particularly because this Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, has issued a decision that has said that there has to be a presumption of correctness as to what the state legislature does when it comes to the redistricting, and it's not done for certain purposes, one of them being partisan purposes. So I just want to put that caveat on what's going on there with the Maryland legislature, what's going on there with Senator Ferguson. And I know Delegate Rogers wanted to jump back in.
Yeah, but
No,
before we
I
do
was
that,
going to say, go
Delegate
ahead,
Rogers,
Mr.
before we
Overton.
do
Go
that,
ahead.
let's take pause for a minute to introduce the councilman. Lewis, you want to introduce the councilman, then we can continue the conversation.
Yes. How you doing, Pete?
I am doing well.
Pete, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
I gave a great introduction to everybody on the thing, and I'm gonna do the same for you. Again, this is Pete Smith. Pete Smith was a person who succeeded Dow Jones in the seat. And a quick story of that is that me and Pete competed for Dow Jones' seat, and during the process, this a-hole person named Grasso called me and Pete 2 studs. And you know what? That didn't go well with me. And he said, we got 2 great studs running for this office, and both of them are great guys, and we got to pick one of them. They picked a younger stud, so they picked Pete Smith to succeed Dow And so Dow won on his own. Now the
Mm.
story with Grasso is a whole nother story, but because that's a story that all three of us can relate to. We don't have time to get into that now. But Pete Smith, like I say,
That's
he's a
another
major
show. Another
in
show.
the Marine Reserve. He's a major in the Marine Reserve, and he done great things, especially with coming up with Christmas time. You're looking at the person who's personally responsible for the biggest gift giving during Christmas in Anne Arundel County, Pete Smith. So he's doing a great job. So Pete, welcome. But we're in the middle of a hot piece of thing right now. So I want to get back to him. Then we let you chime in on it. Daryl
Yeah,
and Mike,
I think Brother
I want to say
So
this.
Rogers was talking.
yeah, so I was just going to say, with
Yeah.
respect to Daryl's analysis, he's spot on. I do know that when we did the last redistricting, that typically happens after a census every 10 years. So in Maryland's case, we just redrew the lines in 2021, and there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers. And I know that the initial map that they came up with, the courts pushed back on. And so we had to, refigure, reconfigure the drawings. And it's not very hard to do. As he was saying, you can, squeeze out this community, move this community over. In the case of where I live at, I used to live in, congressional district 2, but then they moved the lines, and instead of being 2 and 3 running congressional districts running through my neighborhood, became um, you know 5, strictly 5. And so they can move the lines around. There are going to be impacts. The courts can get involved. Last time they did, but based on what Daryl just said, the likelihood this time is that they may not. And so we'll see where this process goes, but I know there are probably some other things that you want to talk about.
But okay. Now look, all three of you, and James, you and I are real Southerners, and I want to get your guys' analysis on this because James, I want you to know that of all the three, I'm the meanest of all the three. So I hit things right between the eye. They try to be too political and too nice. So I'm gonna say something that y'all I'm gonna throw something out that y'all haven't heard in a while. Based on what Daryl said, and Daryl said he laid out all the legal stuff. And I'm listening to Mike and Pete. You can pick up real quick of what we're talking about. Daryl, to me, it proves what I've always said about Maryland is that all we really have is a bunch of Dixiecrats posing as Democrats that they really are Republicans. And by your analysis, you put a nice pretty face on it. But in my view, all the things that you said, all the political things that you said, all it seems to me is just coming down to we are seeing now that Maryland still is full of a bunch of Dixiecrats. That's what it sounds like to me.
Hey, Lewis, before you go there,
Chime in as you feel.
I want to go to the councilman, and he came in late, but I think he got the gist of what we were talking about as far as redistricting. And my concern is what we're doing here in Virginia. And my concern is how that trickles down to the localities, because I feel, all politics is local. And I want to know from the councilman, with all the talk about redistricting, how do you think that's going to affect some of the localities, once all this is done, or whichever way it goes, because it's kind of strange to see all this happening in all these different states, well, it's intentional, and we know that we know what's going on, but yeah, you'll feel about how this, whatever happens, in statewide, how that's going to affect the localities, especially the ones that you represent.
I mean, I think we have started down a path that is pretty hard to return from. I think the president has obviously initiated a chain reaction of things that will impact the entire country, especially when it comes to redistricting. And if you had asked me this question, 5, 10, 15 years ago, I would have said, yeah, we probably shouldn't go to that extreme because once you do, you can't come back. But we have seen with our rights at the Supreme Court being reversed, we have seen states who have taken more drastic measures when it comes to individual rights and human services that have been reduced. That if we don't sort of fight fire with fire, we're going to be the ones on the outside. And so even someone who is as moderate as I am is feeling like, no, we can't just let the entire country or these other states win all these additional seats, and we lose control, or at least some effective approach to governance within the House. And so even someone like me is like, hey, if they're going to do it, we got to do it, because we can't just send over the control of the House for the next 10, 15, 20 years to a part of the political sort of spectrum that is trying to rescind some of the rights that we have enjoyed for certainly my entire life. And I think a lot of my friends believe and hear and feel the same way. That it's all or nothing at this point, because we've been put in the corner, and they have told us what they're going to do over the last certainly the last 8 years.
Yeah.
We just need to listen, and so we certainly need to do something that combats that. But that's how I feel about this process.
Well, we're definitely going to have to keep an eye on that,
Now,
and I know we could have a whole conversation about this, but I want to try to move on, since we have some people on here with military backgrounds. I want to, get y'all take on this issue with with what's going on with the uh, bombing of the boats, and that kind of, calling a war that's not a war, that's not a declared war, and trying to use that as a basis for what they're doing. And so I just wanted to get you all's take on that, with the military backgrounds you have, or just coming from from anybody's perspective on what they're seeing in the news, and what we're not seeing. So anyone can start there, as far as how they feel about
let's
what's going
start
on
with
there.
let's do it by rank.
Sure. So
By
Let's do it
rank.
by rank. Let's
I'll
start
go
with
ahead.
Mike is the highest ranking person here, and then Pete, then me.
So I think that the current Secretary of War, Secretary of Defense, um, is out of his league. I think he's making decisions, trying to please his boss, and he really doesn't have any idea what's going on. I think the black four-star admiral that retired for a reason,
Yeah,
because he wasn't going to
that's
follow. He
that
wasn't
spoke
going to
loud.
follow illegal orders. And I think when you had several members of Congress and who were former military or members of the intelligence community got out there and said, you know, per the Constitution, you're not expected to follow illegal orders. And that created a whole bunch of pushback, but they were spot on. And so, in my mind, I think what they're doing is totally wrong. I think that, there's so many disconnects at so many levels in terms of what they're saying about Venezuela, but then, they're going to offer clemency to a drug lord who was pushing drugs and admittedly pushing drugs into this country. It's unjustifiable. I think what we're also seeing is, a situation where they're looking to try to find leaders within the military who are going to do what they want. But, my hope is, and my belief is that you have folks at lower levels of the military who have been around who are going to do the right thing, and who, when they're faced with, the situation of doing something illegal, are going to take the same stance that the admiral take and say, look, we're not doing that. And I think it's just a matter of time before uh, the Secretary of War does something so egregious that they're going to have his head. And I think it's just a matter of time before that happens.
Pete,
It's just kind of it kind of it's kind of confusing to me, not being a military person, but my dad was, but not being a military person and sitting back and watching this, and why is it such a big deal? I mean, just like you just spelled out, it's you don't follow, unlawful orders, and I've heard we used to have my cousin on here. He was retired colonel, and we talked about that 5 years ago about how that is ingrained in the military, from the beginning, from day one. And why, as a layperson, why are we at this point even having a debate about something that's pretty much military law or international law? That's what confuses me. But I guess that's the administration we have, to be able to do this.
Hey,
Yeah,
Slim,
for
don't
me,
leave out, killing shipwrecked people. Don't leave that part out, Slim.
Right. I mean,
Let Pete say a
they
thing
told a
on
story
that.
about when the Japanese did it. Those guys were executed for doing that because it was against international law or the laws of their land. And here we are every day talking about, and while we are talking, they're still doing it. And I'm not trying to take up for any drug dealers, but the Coast Guard has been out there, and what they do, they approach a boat and they capture all that and capture the drugs, and everything is documented. These guys just going out there, I'm sitting here watching them just blow up people, with no, and I just don't know where do you think we're going with this or where we end up. You pretty much said, Brother Rogers, eventually somebody's head's going to roll because they keep throwing people under the bus. But by that time, how many people are going to lose their lives? Some of them innocently.
So, for me, I think this is just a
Yeah.
big distraction on what's really happening locally in the country when it comes to rights being stripped away from everyday citizens. If you go back to the 80s, with Iran Contra or Operation Just Cause or the piracy and off the shores of Africa, U.S. military assets were actually used in interdicting or even killing some of the folks in those operations. So what we're seeing is not as we've seen before in some other capacities, but how the Department of Defense, because technically the Congress has not changed DOD yet. It is still Department of Defense on paper. And I think the Secretary of War is essentially just using and leveraging this as a distractor, because I think the biggest thing that Darrow is fighting every single day is just the human rights and the social rights that are being stripped away here in America, more so than the boats that are being attacked in the Caribbean, as well as other areas in the southern hemisphere. Because whether or not it's illegal or not, I think obviously time and history will judge that. We do know in the 80s we did similar things with the U.S. using military assets to terminate and or eliminate drug assets. It's similar to what's being done right now, and we've definitely done it when it comes to piracy. When they were coming up on boats, and we've had military assets shoot those boats before they even got to the ships that they were trying to take over. But I'm just disturbed by all of the chaos that's happening internal to America, that's making our lives and retracting back some of those rights that are going to be important for us as citizens and the future of our kids going forward. So that's why it's just a big distraction for me.
Daryl, will you speak to the illegalities on an international level that this rodent in the White House is doing? Because Daryl, all three of the people know I write every day, and I know and I know I get on their nerves. I know Mike, I get on Mike's nerves because all the stuff I write every day. But I wrote all this stuff months ago. I said it was going to happen, and it happened, and now we are here. And so, Daryl, I've been asking for a long time for the state of Maryland to do a proclamation regarding what's going on with this president ordering things of this nature. And I also asked my delegates to appeal to the Court of the Hague. Now, Daryl, will you speak to the legalities or the illegalities of what this man is doing, and why he's not being attacked from the international front for what he's doing to people, blowing people up in the middle of the ocean without any kind of a due process? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for that, Lewis. And, a part of what you're starting to see now, I think, is some of the international response to what the United States, not just President Trump, because it's not seen as President Trump, it's seen as the United States, as to what the United States is doing in the Caribbean and blowing up these ships without any due process, without any real knowledge as to what they're carrying, and then going beyond that and killing survivors, which is what Slim and I were just talking about. And what's going to happen, and what we see happening, is that it's a violation of international law with regards to what the United States is doing and bombing these ships, as well as killing those that are holding on the boards after the ship has been blown up and is dismantled. And the question will become numbers is what do you want to charge them with internationally? Do you want to charge them with the violations under the war stuff? Do you want to charge them with the murders? Do you want to charge them in the International Criminal Court? All of this comes on the table for what they're doing right now and the actions that they're taking. So, Lewis, you're 100% on the mark with regards to what's going to happen internationally and what's available internationally with regards to what's happening. We know that that England has already taken the steps to say we're not going to supply you with any more information about what's going on down in the United States because we see what you're doing with the information. You're doing illegal acts. They're illegal actions that you're taking. Look for other countries to now start following suit in terms of what they're doing and how they're interacting with the United States. Think on this for just one moment. Imagine if it was the United States' boats and folks that were being bombed by another country because they were suspected of having something illegal in the boat. We would be going crazy over that. And the question is, why is the rest of the world, not being more forceful with regards to what the United States is doing? The answer is because the United States is the United States, and it's something that can be very intimidating for smaller countries to get involved in. It's a very, very dangerous path that they're going down. I agree and disagree with Councilman Smith a little bit. I don't see it as a distraction. From this administration, you're going to have multiple things going on, multiple days, all of the time. And the question is going to be, how much can they get through with the least amount of resistance? And so, we've got to be able to walk and chew gum and throw balls in the air all at the same time, because it's going to be throwing a lot at us. They're going to see what can they get away with. Nobody on this panel is in favor of illegal drugs coming into the United States. Nobody is. But everybody, I would suspect, on this panel is in favor of due process and being certain that the laws are being followed and that people's rights are being respected. Not favoring whether or not they have drugs on those ships, whether they have other illegal stuff on the ship, but there's a due process right that should be there. Coast Guard can do it. Why can't we do it with anything else? That's what I think the issue is right here, Lewis, and that's the legal analysis that I think also applies.
I think that's why it's so
Well,
good to have these discussions like this to make people to the points that both of you gentlemen made, to make sure people are aware of everything that's going on. You know, uh, distractions or whatever. And we can multitask and pay attention to everything that's going on. And that's what they don't want us to do. That's why they want to take certain things off the national radar, news radar, on certain days by just throwing stuff out. I mean, he might throw something out about I took over the Kennedy Center, so then the news starts talking about that while they're still doing the crazy things. So these conversations, and that's why I like to have these conversations with guys like you, and we continue to do that. But and just be aware that sometimes we have evening shows, and those evening shows are 2 hours. So keep in mind we'll have plenty of time to continue these conversations,
Yeah,
and just make sure the people that watch us are aware of everything that's going on, from different areas, and just keep both eyes open all the time.
you guys, the Secretary of Defense said something at a meeting here with all the generals here a few weeks ago, and essentially he put a test out there. The test was if it was something 30 years ago, whatever the number was, I think it was around 30 years ago, that was going to be the sort of barometer. If we could have done it then, that we're going to go back to that time. They are going back to the days of the Reagan administration when like I said, when they use CIA assets and military assets to go after drug like Noriega and things like that, where they were using those same platforms, military platforms, to and the councilman and a lawyer, he's certainly right on it. It's completely illegal as far as not allowing the due process. I'm just telling you where their perspective is they're trying to take us backwards. That's why some of the rights in the military, when it comes to some of the women being in some MOSs, when it comes to those who may not look like us, when it comes to on the transgender side of the house, being moved out of the military and not allowing to serve their country. I mean, there are so many things that are being impacted that this secretary is taking a lead on. But this is part of his legacy. I think this is what he's wanting to see our military go back 30 some years. He said it. It's not like I'm paraphrasing him. Literally said go back to that 1995 or whatever it was date, and if we could do it then, or that's what it was, we're going to go back to it. And so they're just trying to take us backwards.
The interesting thing. Well, I'm gonna say a couple things because I've got a hard stop at 7:59
Hmm.
to get on to another 8 o'clock. But Mr. Overton,
Go ahead.
again, thank you for the opportunity, and Lewis, thank you for the invitation. But to Councilman Smith's point, the hypocrisy of this Secretary of Defense, War, whatever, and what he's trying to do. I mean, he can't even meet the same standards that he's espousing. And some of the things that he's doing in terms of grooming standards and so I mean are clearly racist. I mean, if you look it up and down his arms, that tells its own story. And I'm just surprised why no one has called him on any of that. But at the end of the day, it's just a matter of time before he's further exposed and they get rid of him, and who knows what they'll bring in next. But I think the key is that having information, having shows like this that educate and inform. And to Lewis's credit, I mean, he does a lot of educate and inform. I mean, he does it, he probably overdoes it, saying the same thing 3 times, but I mean, what he is doing is educating and informing. And that helps. And we need more of that, because the more people know what's going on, the better they are able to respond and get involved into a lot of the things that former councilman and attorney Daryl Jones is doing with his advocacy as part of his organization. It's all connected. And the only way we're going to change any of this is for everybody to have the information to get out there and make the change that we want to see in terms of getting to the polls, particularly in 2026. Everybody always says, this is the most important election. Well, this is the upcoming election is the most important election. And this is our chance to kind of help swing the pendulum back in the right direction. So that's all I got. And thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. And I will be in touch for what we talked about earlier. Yep. Okay.
Okay. I want to get my piece in on what's happening. And Daryl, I want you to hold on because it's a piece that you need to chime in on, and then I'll turn it back over to James. This is the thing. As I say, James, I write and I bug the hell out of all of these people all the time
Yeah,
about
I get
stuff,
those emails too.
and everything that we're seeing. Yeah, you get them too. I'm bugging you too. The thing
That's okay.
is,
Good
when
information.
certain people see things a certain way, I keep telling the people here, y'all need to listen. And the thing is that people are not listening. Trump is the master chaos agent in this country. Everything that we're talking about, from redistricting to ICE to people being blown up, is all from this one demon, Donald Trump. The whole thing, and Darryl knows this personally, Steve Bannon told us what was going to happen 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and 4 years ago. Everything that we seeing, Steve Bannon told us it was going to happen. And what I have a problem with is that on a national level, the Democratic Party knew all this stuff was coming down. And Dal, you work real close with some of those people in the DNC and other offices. I don't understand why these people don't listen and did not see and was not prepared to address this chaos. Because Steve Bannon he said right on ABC, when we come back, we're gonna throw everything at you. We're gonna be throwing so many things at you, you won't know how to react. And that's what we're seeing. And he told us this. That idiot, racist, Nazi, Stephen Miller told us all these things months in advance. So, Daryl, will you tell this audience in your way, in the best way you can, and Pete, you can follow? I don't understand when they told us, and y'all know I always end my statements with, y'all need to listen. Why isn't the Democratic Party, why wasn't the Democratic Party prepared for all this chaos, and why are they so weak in the face of it?
Well, thanks for that question, Lewis. And let me, just say that, it's been a pleasure being on the show. I'm going to have to drop. I'm going to have to get off to DC. But let me tell you, you're absolutely on point with this. Behind me, I always keep a copy of Project 2025, that 992-page book that was written with regards to what the Trump administration was going to do once it got into office. Many of us that were out there nationally were out there, hitting the trails, telling folks, believe what's in Project 2025. This is what they're going to do. This is what they're going to do. And, I'm not going to say, just the Democrats, but there are people across the country that were not believing that what we were saying would actually come into fruition, that they would actually see a day when the federal government would say, we need to abolish the Department of Education. There would see a day when a Supreme Court would have appointees that would say that the president can do whatever the president wants to do and would be immune from any of the criminal acts, known criminal acts that he's taken. They didn't believe there would be a day that all the stars will align and that the Congress would be controlled by conservatives that were intimidated by the president, that the president would be able to intimidate the courts, and that all of them would be afraid and unwilling to go against the president of the United States of America, because that, folks, is what they would call an authoritarian. Well, guess what? That day is here. If you look at Project 2025 now, just pick it up and go through half of 2025, half of those on nearly 1,000 pages. Those are policies that are now in place. He's halfway through what he's told you he's going to do. So, Lewis, I don't say that it's a thing that the Democrats weren't prepared. It's a thing that America wasn't really prepared. I don't think that America believed that what they were hearing was true. And they thought that there would be guardrails that would be in place to stop any of this stuff from going into action. What we're now seeing is that there are no guardrails. There is no Supreme Court that's coming to save you. There is no House of Representatives. There is no U.S. Senate that's coming to save the principles of the United States. The only thing that's going to save us right now is us and our ability to get out there and vote and put people in office that will stand up for the Constitution, not against the Constitution of the United States, Lewis. So I want to end it on that note and encourage people to, number one, check your voting status right now for the 2026 election. Go to vote.org and be certain that you're registered to vote. Be certain they haven't moved your polling place. They haven't removed you from the registers, because all of this, folks, is happening as we speak today. And with that, Lewis, I bid you guys a farewell and looking forward to seeing you out there in the trails and the footholds and everything else, fighting for people's rights to be able to vote across this country.
Thanks a lot, Attorney. And
Thank you,
before
Daryl.
you go, I'm putting together a show, one of our evening 2-hour shows with Speaker Don Scott and President Pro Tem Louise Lucas. Both are from Portsmouth, so I know them well. And I will invite you to come back on, so we can have a discussion between the two states. So thanks a lot.
Thank
We
you. I love it
appreciate your
because I want
presence
to
here
support.
today.
I want to support their effort to go from a 6-5 Congress to a 10-1 Democratic
How
Congress.
about
We
that?
definitely want to support that in Virginia. All right.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
We're going to bring everybody together to talk about that. Okay. Thanks a lot, brother. Take care. Safe travels. All right, Councilman. I see you put in the notes. I guess you were letting them know what exactly it was the 1990
Yeah, he
test.
called it the 19. He said, "What were the military standards in 1990?" And so they are back then the utilization of the military to do things when it comes to physical standards as well as operationally. That's the litmus test. What were we doing back then? And that's what the SecDef is trying to revert us back to. So, when I was speaking about some of those military operations that we see today happening in the Caribbean, they were happening in the 80s and 90s during some of those same operations. We tried to was it Noriega? I think the military was trying to overthrow the military and the CIA was trying to overthrow, and so there were certainly incidents similar to this where they were human life was taken and wasn't allowed to go through the due process back then, just as they are starting to do right now.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on. We have reached the hour here, and Lewis, thanks a lot for you always bring some great guests on from the state of Maryland, and like I like to keep that DMV connection because we have so many things in common, and and we're going to work on getting, like I told the counselor there, that we're going to work on getting Speaker Scott and Senator Lucas and along with some and Councilman, you're welcome as well. I'll have one of our local council persons on there. I think the diversity of the different elected officials we have on, will be good for
Check.
sharing the information that's coming from local and state, and probably even higher. So we appreciate you coming on today, and
No problem.
continue the great work that you do, and
Uh,
thank you for your sacrifice. As a
before he
military there.
leaves,
Go ahead.
James, before we leave, I like for Pete to let you know that he's running for our county executive seat. I'm supporting him in that effort. So, Pete, can you give 30 seconds on your campaign?
Yes, I mean, I've spent my entire life serving, as the host just said, the last 27 years in serving the military and on and off here in Anne Arundel County, the last 13 years serving local government. And so it's definitely time for someone like me to step up. And I'm in the process now of seeking the seat for county executive here in Anne Arundel County, and looking forward to earning the votes and the support of citizens across this county to do that. And so I'm just blessed to be in this position to even be competitive.
Okay, well, great. Well, continue to come on. When you come on, always push that. We have people in Maryland that watch. Shout out to Ira Dodden, who is from Portsmouth, but he lives in Maryland now, and he regularly tunes in, and he's watching now. I'm not sure what county he's in, but anyway, we do have quite a few people from Maryland that watch, and I'm sure some of them are in the area where you are running. So,
Thank you.
Okay. Well, again, Lewis, thanks a lot, and we appreciate you. And this is a continuation of what we do here, and we'll set up that evening meeting. But thanks for what you do, Lewis. We appreciate you, and keep those emails and notes coming because it's kind of informative. I have to sit down and add more space to my phone because all the notes you send me, it's sort of, it's a lot, but it's very informative. I appreciate it. And I also appreciate our 50 years of knowing each other and graduating from high school together and still have the friendship that we have, and doing what we do now. Appreciate it. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching and appreciate it. We want you to like,
I appreciate you
subscribe,
as
and make sure
always
you share this information.
providing this format.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate you. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time. And you all have a great day and take care. And remember to always be aware, be informed, and most of all, be involved. Take care. We'll see you next time. Be our guest on the Portsmouth